This is Jonathan Agler, fifth Pro Boxing fans, joined for the first time in a while by Dan Rafael. He's back. Dan, how's life treating you?
All good, Jonathan. It's a pleasure to be back with you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Good to see you back. Obviously, big stuff happening in boxing. Obviously, with the Usyk Fury fight. First of all, haven't asked you for a few months how your Fight Freaks Unite's going. So yeah, tell everyone about your newsletter and how things have progressed since we last spoke.
Yeah, I appreciate that. No, the newsletter is on Substack. It's Fight Freaks Unite. You can go and sign up for it with your email. It takes about 2 seconds to punch in your email, and you get my email blast. You can set up your phone alert to give you the app on Substack is phenomenal. They have newsletters on basically every topic you could think of, but mine is obviously about boxing. And for those who are really into it, the way I am able to partly make my living is to with paid subscriptions, and I appreciate the support from everybody. But you get the blast. I mean, I'm writing pretty much every single day, so if you were doing interested in say Fury Usyk, within a little bit after the fight, you got the blast on my story, pre-fight stuff, post-fight stuff. We do that pretty much for all the big fights and notebooks and my podcast and all that. So thank you for asking, and I hope everybody goes out there and just goes to Substack, danrafael.substack.com, and signs up.
Yeah, and I'll put a link in the description so people can
Appreciate it.
sign up and check that out. Dan, obviously a huge heavyweight title fight Saturday night that you reported on. Oleksandr Usyk beating Tyson Fury again. First of all, in terms of the scoring, how did you have it?
I scored at 115 to 113 in favor of Alexander Usyk. Uh, I thought 116, 112, which were the three official scorecards that the judges turned in, had no problem with that because there was definitely some close rounds in there. I thought that I had in my own particular card, and I have like my weird way of keeping my scores because I do take it down and either write it down on a piece of paper or I type it into my computer while I'm watching the fight. But there was a couple of rounds where I like in particular I like could have gone the other way. So to me anyway, and I talk about this a lot on my podcast when we go over scoring of different fights. I always discuss the range of acceptable scores. So for me, if you had the fight 116, 112, I think that's absolutely perfectly fine. If you had it 115, 113 in favor of Usyk, also fine. And I also would say if you bent over backwards to give every conceivable possible benefit to Tyson Fury, maybe you could come up with a draw. But even if he gets a draw, Usyk is still the heavyweight champ of the world. I did not think it was as legit that you could have Fury actually winning the fight. And that said, though, I thought that Tyson Fury fought a really good fight. I didn't think he fought badly at all. I thought he actually fought, to me, a very complete fight, a very disciplined fight. He had a good game plan. I thought when I was listening to what Sugar Hill was saying in the corner, I thought he was saying the right things to Tyson. I thought he you could tell he was trying to land the uppercut, which is a great punch of his. Like I can't really complain if you're on Fury's side that he didn't fight a good fight. It's just that Alexander Usyk fought better, not by a lot, but just enough to get the win, similar to what happened in their first fight, that it was a good, close, competitive fight, and that Alexander Usyk, I guess you could say, has Tyson Fury's number.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Fury, was questioned in the first fight about, mucking around and showboating and things like that. And we saw obviously a more focused Tyson Fury, but in your opinion, obviously it went to the cards and he didn't get it. What did he have to do differently to have won that fight?
Well, I mean, like he first of all, you're right. He didn't he showboat. He didn't goof around. He said in the lead up to the fight that he was not that he didn't take the first fight seriously, but that he was more focused and he was gonna be more stay to that plan in the fight and not sort of let his emotions get to him or let any of the hoopla get to him, but just stay tunnel vision on what he's got in front of him. And I thought he did a pretty good job doing that. Now maybe he got a little bit tired at the end of the fight. Usyk is a guy that is always in absolutely supreme condition and could probably go 15 rounds if necessary. I'm not sure Tyson would still be there in rounds 13, 14, 15 with the proper win. What he could do different, I mean he did a pretty good job with his jab, but he probably could have used it a little bit more to try to you're really in a more powerful way, let's say, take it to Usyk, who is hittable. I mean, he's got good defense, but it's not like he doesn't get hit. He probably could have tried to go to the body a little bit more, slow him down, because when he did hit him in the body, which has always been a perceived negative about Usyk's game, he seemed like he had some success. Maybe he just didn't do that enough. But sometimes, no matter what you do, the other guy is going to just be a little bit better because Usyk just had an answer pretty much for everything. So every time Tyson sort of got going, suddenly there'd be a straight left hand in his face. Like he just couldn't really pick up any steam, have any like really sustained periods of time where he was the man on offense. He'd have little spurts doing it here or there for a few seconds at a time, but not necessarily enough to either A, sway the judges in that particular round, or B, more importantly, do any serious damage to Usyk to get him out of his plan. Uh, I honestly don't think that there is a massive amount that you could go back and watch the video on and say Fury did this bad or did that bad. Like, he fought a really good fight, I thought. I mean, and he just got beat by the better guy that night.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, just Usyk has beaten certainly every Brit that he's faced, and a lot of people saying like, what else is there really left for him? Obviously, we saw Daniel Dubois storm the ring, called for a rematch, as you'd probably expect. First of all, on that, with the Joseph Parker fight, what, 7, 8 weeks away?
Mm-hmm.
Are you surprised that he did that, or is it the right thing for him to do to call for the rematch on a world stage like that?
I mean, look, I have never had a problem with a boxer calling for a fight or a rematch. I thought the way that Daniel Dubois did that, the way that he conducted himself, was absolutely childlike. It was bush league, and I like Daniel. I'm not anti Daniel Dubois whatsoever. But here you have a great warrior, a great fighter, a great heavyweight champion like Oleksandr Usyk, who's been nothing but a credit to boxing. He's 15 seconds, 20 seconds, a minute after they announce him as the winner of the fight. Huge, huge emotional moment. And he's gotten like one or two questions with his interview in the ring after the fight, and you storm the ring. I mean, that's not professional. I mean, if you want to call him out, by all means call him out, but let the man have his interview. Like, you just won the biggest fight. You're trying to insert yourself in his glorious moment, and I don't like that. And that's not just Dubois. I've seen other fighters do that too, and I just think it's ridiculous. Now, you want to call him out after his interview is over because look, they knew what was going to happen because he was allowed in the ring. Obviously, he didn't just storm the ring without somebody allowing him to be in that position. Obviously, he's with Frank Warren, as is Tyson Fury. He was part of it. He's a big part of Riyadh's season and the events they've been doing. So, okay, he's going to be in the ring. And that the broadcasters, on whichever broadcast you were watching it on, they're going to probably go to him to ask him some questions also. So you can lay back for a few seconds, a minute or two, and let Usyk have his moment that you've now ruined or interjected yourself into. There's going to be plenty of time for you to call him out. And also, as you said, the guy's got a hard, tough, legit fight in front of him in, like you said, less than 2 months in February when he fights Joseph Parker. And anybody who thinks that Joseph Parker is some kind of doormat for Daniel Dubois to just run over is an idiot, because I mean, maybe Daniel will win the fight, fair enough, but that's not a like a blowout kind of fight. I don't think that's a real legit fight. Joseph Parker is an excellent top level heavyweight in today's era. He's been on a really good run his last few fights, and that is not an easy fight. So if he does win, I can certainly see them maybe making the rematch with Usyk. I don't personally have a desire to see it. I mean, one thing is the first fight with Usyk that he had was totally one-sided, and Daniel essentially quit in the fight and then complained about a non-low blow that they claim was a low blow. We don't have to relitigate that. But to Daniel's credit, he's done a great job since then by winning, four fights in a row. He beat Gerald Miller, obviously scored the massive knockout against Anthony Joshua, which was the big one. He won the interim belt when he defeated Filip Hrgović. I mean, he's been on a good roll lately. I think there was one other fight in there that escapes my memory at the moment. But the point is, he's hot, and he's sort of, and I guess the fourth fight would be if he beats Joseph Parker. So if you go Parker and you also have a victory against Anthony Joshua in the manner that he scored it, and you also have the victory against Hrgović, who he did a good job against, and obviously he defeated Gerald Miller, the first fighter to beat him. Now you've got yourself since you lost in the championship fight to Usyk, and you put together those 4 wins in a row, like now you've at least earned the possibility they rematch. So I would get it if they do make it, because if you're on the Usyk side of things, what else is there? It's not going to be a third fight against Tyson Fury, at least not now. I don't see that being a big deal. There's probably unlikely to be a Joshua third fight. I mean, that doesn't make a lot of sense to anybody. First of all, Joshua and Fury will probably end up fighting each other, I would imagine. And the obvious fight, I guess, for him would be either to fight the winner of Parker against Dubois, or look to one of the other contenders. That's maybe not a huge name, but give an opportunity and an optional defense. Martin Bakoli is out there. Ajit Kabiel is out there. He's going to fight an eliminator. Maybe him against, was he fighting a Jagba? I mean, there are other.
Zhang.
Who's,
He's on Zhile Zhang.
yeah, Zhang, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, any of those types of guys, all you got to do is go take a look at the Riyadh season undercards and look at the various heavyweights that have won in recent fights, and you could maybe select one of those if he's hungry to continue to fight. I suspect that he will go on because I don't know a lot of undefeated heavyweight champions that retire other than Rocky Marciano, and especially you're in a position like Usyk where you can make literally tens of millions of dollars every time you step in the ring.
Yeah. Obviously, in terms of Fury, people were asking him whether he was going to continue and things. Obviously, that Joshua fight isn't probably what it once was, but we know if that gets announced, that's 100,000 at Wembley straight away. Do you think that's the natural fight, or do you think both men would have one in between, or what's your thoughts?
My thoughts are if they do anything other than fight each other next, then they're all stupid. Because why would the fight's already diminished? We know that.
Hmm.
But like you said, and I agree, diminished or otherwise, Fury coming off a second straight loss to Usyk, Joshua having been splattered at Wembley, uh, the aura of undefeated champions or four titles or whatever fighting each other, that's out the window. Why in the world would you gamble another loss? Look what happened when they finally were able to make Wilder against Joshua after all those years, and they did them in the doubleheader, and Deontay Wilder got knocked out, and there went that fight. Now that was another fight that even if it had happened, it was way past its sell-by date. Should have happened back, 5 years ago when it would have been for the undisputed championship when they were both still undefeated. So the Fury against Joshua, you make it next. There's what are we waiting on? I mean, Fury's 36. He's got two losses in a row. He ain't getting any younger. Anthony Joshua's got multiple losses. He's been knocked out badly in his last fight, but people still want to see the fight. But how much longer they're still going to want to see the fight, I can't tell you that. But I know this: if you set that fight up next and you put that fight at Wembley Stadium, they will have 100,000 ish or 90,000 people there. No doubt about it. Whether it's for the title or not, it's still a fight that a lot of Brits and frankly even non-Brits, I still would like to see the fight. It's still compelling to me. It's not what it would be if it was for the undisputed title or for the heavyweight championship of any kind. But bring it on. I mean, what the fuck else are they going to do?
Hmm.
And
Uh,
where else can they make that kind of money? And Turkey would like to do it. Makes a lot of sense.
yeah. In just on terms of Usyk, obviously he's a generational great. Where are you ranking him in terms of all-time list? I mean, he's beaten everyone of this generation, albeit maybe not, the generation of the 80s with Tyson and Lennox and everything, but where would you rank him in the all-time list?
Well, I've always made a point, and as long as I've been covering boxing almost 25 years, that I'm not big into making the all-time lists or this or that while the guy's still an active fighter.
Mm.
And the example that I've used numerous times when this topic has come up, and not just about Alexander Usyk, but others, when you're questioned whether it was Tyson Fury or question about a Canelo Alvarez or question about this superstar or that superstar, is that I covered Roy Jones when he was an active fighter at the top level, when he was the pound for pound number one fighter in the world. And on the night that he defeated John Ruiz for the WBA heavyweight title, and he was number one pound for pound, and he had jumped over the cruiserweights and he'd won a heavyweight belt. Granted, John Ruiz at that time was not the champ. That was still Lennox Lewis at that time. But John Ruiz at that moment was probably at worst like the third ranked guy in the division. And he still outweighed Roy Jones by 45 pounds or something like that. And Roy went up and he didn't just win, he won every single round and put on a masterclass and was now a heavyweight champion. And they were even talking about him fighting against Lennox Lewis potentially, or him against like a Evander Holyfield was another fight that came up in conversation. Anyway, here's the point though. On that night, had Roy Jones decided to retire, or even if he had decided to retire following his next fight, which was when he went back down to the light heavyweight division and had a really hard, rough, tough fight, toughest fight of his career up to that point against Antonio Tarver in their first bout, and he still won and was now light heavyweight champion again. If he had retired at that stage, we'd be having a conversation about Roy Jones among the top 10 pound for pound fighters in the history of boxing, period.
Mm.
And then he went on for another 10 years, suffered several knockout losses, lost to like very average, just normal type of guys. And, was a real kind of long downward spiral that was sad to see. And it doesn't detract from what he did at his best when he was the greatest fighter in the world for probably about a decade. My point, though, is it had definitely impacted where people rate him and think about him in the aftermath of his career finally being over. So to say where Usyk is now, I have no idea if he's going to fight for another year, if he's going to retire, if he's going to fight for 5 more years or 10 more years to make a real true assessment. At the moment, I don't think it's out of the question to say, A, he's the number one fighter in the world pound for pound right now. He's obviously the clear and undefeated heavyweight champ of the world. And if he does fight Daniel Dubois to collect the IBF belt that they took from him, he'll be undisputed again, but, it's a belt that he should still have anyway. So it doesn't really mean that much in terms of getting the belt back. Um, where he goes in terms of all time, look, I've been having the back and forth with folks on social media. I've had Looney Tunes who tell me they should put him in the top 3 all time pound for pound. I'm like, everybody like take a deep breath. He's a great fighter, but you're not putting him ahead of like the Sugar Ray Robinsons of the world and Muhammad Ali's at this point. He's a top 20 heavyweight, I would say, at this point. I don't think that's outlandish. I don't think he's a top 10 heavyweight. He's only got 7 heavyweight fights to his name. Now, they're obviously mostly excellent wins in the heavyweight division, 2 against Fury, 2 against Joshua, the domination of Dubois, and then 2 other fights that were not in title fights. Obviously, Chisora gave him a tough fight, and when he made the debut at the heavyweight division against Chaz Witherspoon, a journeyman type opponent, he won that fight pretty easily. You could actually make an argument that Derek Chisora has maybe given him the toughest fight of his career, other than maybe Tyson Fury in their first fight. So I'd say top 20 heavyweight at this point, with a chance, obviously, depending on what else he accomplishes through the rest of his career, to move up that list. But I'm not ready to anoint him ahead of a whole bunch of other outstanding heavyweights. And then in terms of like the all-time pound for pound that people have been talking about, I mean, is he a top 50 pound for pound guy right now? Yeah, probably. But I mean, there's still work to be done. I mean, he's tremendous. I mean, one thing he can take away is he's probably the greatest Ukrainian fighter of all time. And I say that knowing that there's 2 Klitschko brothers and Vasily Lomachenko that are on that list, but I think he's done quite a bit to at least maybe nose ahead of those guys. But all I know is this: he'll be in the Hall of Fame, and it'll be my pleasure to vote for him when I get my ballot when he's eligible.